There are stories that people whisper late at night, when the cicadas sing and the air feels heavy with memory. In a small American town tucked between pine woods and cornfields, there was one such story about a woman named Evelyn Hart. Her life was quiet, almost invisible, and yet her silence held a storm no one cared to see. Neighbors often said that Evelyn was the kindest woman they knew. She helped old Mr. Daniels repair his porch without asking for payment. She cooked pies for the local church on Sundays, and she always greeted people with eyes that seemed soft as candlelight. Her smile had the uncanny power to calm even the rudest customer at the diner where she sometimes worked part-time. But behind that gentle exterior, Evelyn carried a pain that weighed heavier with every passing year. For 7 years, she had been married to a man named Travis. In the beginning, their marriage had been filled with the simple promises of young love. They had laughed under the stars, held hands on long walks down Main Street, and dreamt of filling their small house with children. Yet the children never came. And when silence grew where a baby's cry should have been, everything in Travis began to change. By the 4th year, Travis had become restless. He spent longer hours at the auto shop, came home smelling of beer, and spoke less and less to her. By the 5th year, he began to sleep on the couch, mumbling excuses about back pain. By the 6th, arguments exploded like fireworks in the night. He accused her of being broken, of wasting his life, of embarrassing him in front of his family. Evelyn said little in return. What could she say when the town itself echoed his judgment? Everyone assumed a barren woman was at fault. No one asked if perhaps it was the man. One chilly evening in late October, Evelyn sat on the porch of her modest house, peeling apples for a pie. The sky above was painted with streaks of orange and purple, and the wind carried the smell of burning leaves from somewhere down the street. She worked slowly, her hands moving out of habit rather than joy. Inside, the house was dim, silent except for the occasional creak of pipes. Her father, Henry, came outside holding a half-empty bottle of whiskey. He looked at her the way one looks at an old chair taking up too much space. "You sit there like a ghost," he muttered, his words slurred. 7 years and not a single child. What kind of woman are you, Evelyn? Her throat tightened, but she kept her eyes on the apples. She had heard it all before. Her mother, Ruth, appeared in the doorway, her sharp voice cutting the air. "Your cousins all have children running around their yards. Even that foolish cousin of yours who never finished high school has 3. But you just sit here with pies and empty hands." Evelyn pressed the knife harder against the apple, willing herself not to cry. She had begged God in private prayers, searched her soul for answers, and even gone to a small clinic in the next town over, but the shame never left. That night she lay awake on the thin mattress in her childhood bedroom. Travis had left her months before, returning her to her parents like a broken appliance. Evelyn listened to the muffled voices of her parents arguing in the kitchen. She assumed it was the usual quarrel about money, but then she heard her name. Henry's voice was low but sharp. "We need that cash, Ruth. Earl Peterson said he would pay in full. Whether she likes it or not, Evelyn is going." Her mother's reply came softer but firm. "What if she refuses? She is not a child anymore." "Then we make her go," Henry snapped. "She is living under our roof again, eating our food. Travis sent her back like spoiled milk, and without a child, she has no value. Earl does not care if she is barren. He wants someone to cook, clean, and keep his bed warm. That is all." The words cut through Evelyn like glass. Her heart hammered in her chest. She pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from gasping aloud. She realized with a sinking horror that her parents were planning to sell her off like livestock. At dawn, she sat silently at the kitchen table, staring at the grain of the wood. Her parents did not look at her. They did not need to. The decision had already been made. That afternoon, Henry told her to dress in her best clothes. "We are going to the square," he ordered. Evelyn's eyes burned with unshed tears. "Why are you doing this to me?" Her father slammed his hand on the table. "Because you are lucky anyone still wants you. If you were born into another family, they would have left you on the riverbank." Her mother's eyes flickered with something that looked like guilt, but her lips pressed into a hard line. "Just do what your father says." Evelyn felt her legs tremble beneath her. Every step she took down the sidewalk toward the square felt like walking into a nightmare. People stared from porches and shop windows. She heard the whispers. "That is the Barren one. Her parents are trading her for money." At the center of the square stood Earl Peterson, a man known for his wealth and his arrogance. He wore a stiff brown jacket that strained against his belly, and his eyes moved over Evelyn with a hunger that made her stomach turn. "She looks worn out," he said bluntly, "but I suppose she can keep up with the housework." "She is strong," Henry insisted quickly. "She has worked since she was a child." Earl pulled an envelope from his pocket and waved it. "Here is the balance." Her father's hand reached for it eagerly. That was the moment Evelyn broke. She pulled back sharply, her voice louder than she ever thought possible. "Stop! You cannot do this to me! I am not property!" The square fell silent. Earl frowned, his lips curling in distaste. Henry grabbed her arm, yanking her forward. "Quiet, you ungrateful girl! After all we have done for you, this is how you repay us?" Tears blurred her vision, but she stood her ground. "You raised me to believe I mattered. Now you throw me away like trash." Before Earl could respond, the low rumble of an engine echoed across the square. Heads turned as a black SUV rolled to a stop. The doors opened, and out stepped a tall man in a navy suit. His presence was steady, unshaken, as though he had stepped into the moment on purpose. Beside him in the vehicle were 4 children, their curious faces pressed against the glass. He removed his sunglasses and looked directly at Evelyn. His voice carried a calm authority that silenced even the gossips at the edges of the square. "Is this your daughter?" he asked Henry. "Yes," Henry answered, confused. "Who are you?" The man ignored the question and turned to Evelyn. "Are you here by choice?" Her voice failed her, but she shook her head quickly. The man faced Earl. "How much were you paying?" "Who are you to interfere?" Earl barked. "I am someone who does not stand by and watch cruelty," the man replied. He pulled out his wallet, counted double the cash Earl had offered, and pressed it into Henry's reluctant hands. Then he looked at Evelyn. "You are free now. Come with me if you want." For the first time in years, Evelyn felt a flicker of hope ignite inside her. She stepped forward, trembling, as whispers spread through the square. The man opened the SUV door and she climbed in. As the vehicle pulled away, Evelyn looked back once. Her parents stood frozen, holding the envelope of cash, and Earl's face was twisted with anger. No one tried to stop her. For the first time, she was leaving not as someone discarded, but as someone chosen. The SUV's interior smelled faintly of leather and cedar, a clean, steady scent that contrasted so sharply with the dust of the town square that Evelyn almost forgot to breathe. Her hands shook against her lap, but she forced herself to sit upright. Through the tinted windows, she watched as the buildings of her small town slipped away, replaced by stretches of road and fields blurred in the evening light. The man beside her did not speak at once. He sat with a posture that was both relaxed and commanding, as if he had practiced silence until it became part of him. His dark hair was cropped neatly, and his jaw was set firm, but not unkind. She stole a glance at him, then quickly looked away. The children in the back seat whispered softly, their voices rising and falling like a secret song. One little boy leaned forward, his round face curious. "Daddy, who is she?" he asked. The man turned to the child and then to Evelyn. "Her name is Evelyn," he said calmly. She is a guest in our home for now." The boy nodded, though confusion lingered in his eyes. A girl a few years older crossed her arms and frowned. Evelyn felt the weight of that frown more than any words could deliver. She looked back out the window, her vision blurring as tears stung her eyes. The man finally spoke directly to her. "My name is Daniel Reeves. Do not be afraid. You are safe with us." Safe. The word felt heavy, almost foreign. Evelyn swallowed hard and tried to form a response. "Why did you help me?" Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. Daniel kept his gaze forward. "Because what I saw was wrong, and because sometimes it takes only one person to break a chain." Evelyn folded her hands tightly together to keep them from trembling. She wanted to believe him, yet her life had taught her caution. Trust had been broken too many times. The drive stretched for nearly 2 hours. The town gave way to suburbs, and the suburbs to wide highways lined with trees whose branches tangled together overhead. The sun dipped lower until the world outside became a canvas of muted blues and grays. Evelyn sat stiff and silent, afraid that if she moved, she would wake from what felt like a fragile dream. When the SUV finally turned into a gated driveway, her breath caught. The gate swung open smoothly, revealing a house that did not look real. It stood 3 stories tall, its white walls glowing faintly under the porch lights, its windows like clear eyes gazing out into the night. The lawn was wide and green, a fountain at the center casting arcs of water that sparkled under the lamps. Her feet hesitated as Daniel stepped out first. "You can come," he said gently. "No one here will harm you." Evelyn drew a shaky breath and climbed out. Her legs wobbled against the smooth driveway, so different from the gravel paths of her hometown. She held herself still, unwilling to show weakness in front of strangers. The children spilled out behind her, their chatter filling the night air. A tall woman in a gray uniform appeared at the doorway. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun, and her face bore the calm efficiency of someone who ran a household with precision. Daniel gestured toward her. "This is Linda. She manages the house." Linda gave Evelyn a measured look from head to toe. "Welcome," she said, her voice polite but without warmth. "I will show you to your room." Evelyn followed quietly, her shoes clicking against the polished floor as she entered the mansion. The interior was brighter than she expected. Light spilled from chandeliers, reflecting off marble tiles, so clean they seemed to shine. Paintings hung on the walls, landscapes of mountains and rivers, reminders of a world larger than her pain. Linda led her down a long hallway and opened a door at the end. "This will be yours," she said. The room was spacious, with a bed dressed in white sheets, a wooden wardrobe, and a small desk with a lamp already glowing. A vase of fresh flowers sat on the windowsill. Evelyn froze, overwhelmed by the sight. It was larger than the entire bedroom she had once shared with Travis. "You can rest," Linda added, her tone firm but not unkind. "If you need anything, ask." She left without waiting for a reply. Evelyn stood in the center of the room, uncertain what to do. She touched the edge of the bed with her fingertips. It felt too soft, too new. She placed her small bag, her only possession, on the floor and sat on the edge of the mattress. Her body shook as tears finally came, hot and uncontrollable. She pressed her palms against her face, not sure if she was crying from relief or fear. A knock startled her. She wiped her eyes quickly. Daniel stood in the doorway, holding a tray with a bowl of soup and a glass of water. He stepped inside and set it on the desk. "You did not come to dinner," he said. "I was not hungry," she whispered. "You should eat something," he replied. His voice was gentle, without command. "You do not owe anyone here repayment. You are here because I believe you deserve more than what was done to you." She looked at him, confusion filling her chest. "Why me?" Daniel paused, his gaze steady. Because when I saw you standing there, I remembered what it felt like to be powerless. And I cannot walk away from that. He left the room quietly, leaving Evelyn with the warmth of the soup and words she could not fully understand. She ate slowly, each spoonful heavy with both gratitude and disbelief. That night, Evelyn lay awake in the soft bed. She listened to the unfamiliar hum of the air conditioning, the distant laughter of children down the hall, and the silence of a house too large for her to comprehend. She thought of her parents, of the envelope in her father's hand, of the square that had held her shame. Then she thought of Daniel's words, "You are safe." Morning came with sunlight spilling through the curtains. Evelyn rose early, afraid of seeming ungrateful. She opened the wardrobe and found simple clothes folded neatly inside. Someone had prepared them for her. She chose a plain dress, smoothed her hair, and stepped into the hallway. The sound of clattering dishes led her to the kitchen. Linda was there, moving briskly as she prepared breakfast. Evelyn approached hesitantly. "May I help?" Linda turned, eyebrows raised. "You do not have to." "I want to," Evelyn said quietly. Linda studied her for a moment, then handed her a cutting board and a pile of carrots. "Then start with these." Evelyn rolled up her sleeves and began peeling, her hands steadying with the familiar motion. Cooking was something she could do well. For a while, the silence between them was not uncomfortable. Then a voice broke it. It was the older girl from the SUV, her arms crossed, her eyes sharp. She stared at Evelyn for a long moment before speaking. "Are you here to replace my mother?" Evelyn's knife paused mid-cut. She looked at the girl softly. "No," she said. "No one can replace your mother." The girl narrowed her eyes, then turned and left without another word. Evelyn's chest ached as she returned to her work, her mind heavy with the knowledge that belonging would not come easily. But as she stood there, peeling carrots in a stranger's kitchen, Evelyn felt something shift. For the first time in years, she was not merely surviving. She was beginning, however small, to live. The third day in the Reeves household began with a cool dawn breeze that rattled the curtains in Evelyn's room. She had not slept much. The mattress was soft, the air calm, yet her mind refused to rest. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the envelope of cash in her father's hand, the smirk on Earl Peterson's face, and the silent eyes of neighbors who had watched her humiliation without protest. Still, when sunlight spilled across the floorboards, she forced herself to rise. She told herself that today she would do more than just exist in this house. She found her way to the garden just after sunrise. It stretched behind the mansion, a wide expanse of roses, lilies, and sunflowers planted with an order that seemed both intentional and deeply personal. She walked among them slowly, brushing her fingertips over the petals. Back in her hometown, she had always kept small flower pots on her windowsill, though her father had called them useless decoration. Here, the flowers did not feel useless. They felt alive, breathing hope into the air. A voice startled her. "You like them?" She turned to see Daniel standing a few feet away, dressed in running clothes, a sheen of sweat on his forehead. His presence was steady, unhurried, like someone who had long ago learned not to be rattled by chaos. "I do," Evelyn said softly. "They remind me that beauty can grow even where there has been pain." Daniel nodded, his gaze drifting over the roses. "I planted most of these myself. After my wife died, I needed something to keep me from breaking apart. Flowers listen when no one else does." Evelyn lowered her eyes, sensing the weight in his words. "I am sorry," she whispered. "Thank you," he replied simply. He did not expand, and she did not press. Instead, they stood in silence, listening to the breeze move through the garden. Later that morning, Evelyn joined Linda in the kitchen again. This time she offered to knead bread dough. Her hands, though still trembling from nerves, found a rhythm that calmed her. Linda observed quietly, then said, "You work hard." "It helps me feel useful," Evelyn admitted. Linda's expression softened just slightly. "Usefulness is not the same as belonging. Do not confuse the two." The words lingered in Evelyn's mind, though she did not respond. She had lived too long believing her worth was tied only to what she could produce. As breakfast was served, the children gathered around the large dining table. Evelyn sat at the far end, not sure if she was welcome. The younger boy, the one who had asked about her in the car, smiled at her shyly. He slid his plate toward her. "Can you cut my pancakes?" Evelyn blinked, then nodded. She picked up the knife and fork, slicing carefully. The boy grinned in satisfaction and returned to eating. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a door cracking open. The eldest daughter, the one with eyes sharp as glass, was not so easily moved. She set her fork down loudly. "Why is she sitting here, Dad?" Daniel looked at her calmly. "Because she lives here now." "She is not family," the girl shot back. "She is welcome," Daniel replied with quiet firmness. "Being kind costs nothing, and it is never wasted." The table fell into silence. Evelyn kept her gaze lowered, but her hands shook beneath the tablecloth. She wondered if she was making things harder for him. After the meal, Evelyn retreated to her room. She sat by the window, staring at the garden. Her chest ached with both gratitude and uncertainty. Why had Daniel really brought her here? What did he expect from her? She had no answers. That evening, when Daniel returned from work, he found her standing in the hallway, unsure where to go. He slowed his steps. "You do not have to freeze whenever I walk by," he said with a faint smile. "I am still trying to understand everything," Evelyn admitted. "You are doing well," he replied. He paused, then added, "Healing takes time. Do not rush it." She nodded, though the word healing felt distant, almost unreachable. Days passed. Evelyn began to move through the mansion with more familiarity. She learned where the children kept their toys, where Linda stored the flour, where the sunlight fell brightest in the late afternoon. She never forced herself on the children, but sometimes they came to her. The younger boy, whose name was Caleb, brought her drawings of stick figures holding hands. The twins, Emma and Claire, asked her to help braid their doll's hair. The second oldest, Noah, came one evening with a torn shirt, asking if she could fix it. Only the eldest daughter, Hannah, remained cold. She watched Evelyn with suspicion, her eyes following every gesture as if waiting for proof of betrayal. Evelyn felt the weight of that gaze every day, but she refused to push. She knew from experience that wounds did not heal under pressure. One afternoon, Evelyn was in the library when she heard shouting upstairs. She hurried up the staircase and found Hannah standing over Caleb, who sat crying on the floor with a broken picture frame in his hands. "He touched Mom's photo," Hannah snapped. "He has no right." Caleb sobbed. "I just wanted to see her face." Evelyn knelt quickly, pulling Caleb into her arms. "It was an accident," she said gently. "You do not belong here," Hannah shouted, her voice shaking with anger. "Stop pretending. You want to replace her. I can see it." Evelyn's chest tightened. She kept her voice steady. "I never said I wanted that. I know no one can take her place." Hannah's eyes burned. "Then why does Dad look at you like you are special? Why do the others smile at you? You are just some woman he picked up like trash at a market." The words struck harder than a slap. Evelyn's throat closed, but she refused to cry in front of her. She held Caleb tighter, shielding him from the storm of Hannah's grief. Before Evelyn could respond, Daniel's voice cut through the hallway. "Hannah, that is enough." Hannah turned, her face flushed with fury. "She is changing everything. You cannot make me accept her." Daniel's voice was calm but firm. "Hurting your brother and insulting someone who has done nothing wrong is not how we honor your mother's memory." "She will never be my mother!" Hannah screamed, then ran into her room, slamming the door so hard the walls trembled. Silence fell. Caleb clung to Evelyn, his tears soaking her dress. Daniel crouched beside them. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. Evelyn nodded, though her heart ached. "She is hurting," she whispered. "That is all this is." Daniel looked at her closely. "You are helping more than you realize." That night, Evelyn sat in her room, the echoes of Hannah's anger replaying in her mind. She felt like an intruder again, a shadow in a house that did not belong to her. She wanted to leave, to spare them all the conflict. Yet when she remembered Caleb's small arms around her and Noah's quiet trust when he handed her his torn shirt, she realized she could not. She whispered into the quiet night, more to herself than to anyone listening, "I will not give up." The garden outside swayed in the breeze, its flowers standing tall even after storms. Evelyn looked at them and found her resolve reflected back. She was no longer a woman sold for silence. She was a woman learning to stand again. The days that followed Hannah's outburst carried a strange silence through the Reeves home. The younger children, who had once filled the halls with laughter, now spoke in hushed tones, glancing nervously at their sister's closed bedroom door. Evelyn noticed the difference most of all. The mansion, though grand and filled with light, seemed to hold its breath. Even Linda, usually steady and firm, moved through the kitchen with a quieter step. Evelyn spent much of her time in her room, torn between stepping forward and stepping back. She wanted to protect the fragile trust she had begun to build with the children, but she feared her presence was the very spark tearing them apart. She prayed silently each night, asking for strength not to give in to despair. One evening, Daniel found her sitting in the library with a book unopened in her lap. He entered quietly, his footsteps soft against the carpet. "You are avoiding the children," he said. Evelyn looked down, ashamed. "I thought it might make things easier. Hannah sees me as a threat. Perhaps if I stay out of the way, she will heal." Daniel sat across from her, leaning forward. "You stepping back will not heal her. It will only teach her that anger can drive away whatever scares her. What she needs is not your absence, but your patience." Evelyn met his gaze, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. "She said I was pretending to be kind. She called me trash. I do not know if I can reach her." "You already have," Daniel replied. "She would not fight so fiercely if she did not feel the shift you bring into this house. Pain often wears the mask of anger." Evelyn nodded, though uncertainty lingered. His words gave her courage. But the wound Hannah had left still stung. The next afternoon, Evelyn heard faint crying as she walked down the hallway. She followed the sound to Hannah's room, but stopped at the door. She placed her hand on the knob, then pulled it away. Forcing her way in would solve nothing. She whispered to herself, "You cannot force healing. It has to be chosen." She turned and walked away, her heart heavy. That evening, the house was unusually still. Daniel had gone to a dinner meeting, Linda had taken the driver to run errands, and the security guards stayed outside at the gate. Inside, only Evelyn and the children remained. She walked past the living room and found Caleb curled on the couch, sketching on scraps of paper. The twins were sprawled on the rug with dolls, and Noah sat cross-legged with a comic book. Hannah was nowhere to be seen. Evelyn smiled softly. "What are you drawing, Caleb?" He held up a page proudly. It showed a house with stick figures, a tall man, 4 children, and a woman in a dress colored yellow. "This is us," he said. Her chest tightened. "And who is that in yellow?" "You," he answered simply. I call you Auntie Eve now. Is that okay? Tears filled her eyes. She knelt and hugged him tightly. Yes, that is okay. The twins giggled, calling her Auntie, too, as if the word carried magic. For the first time in weeks, warmth filled the room. Then a voice cut through the laughter. Why are you all acting like she belongs here? Hannah stood in the doorway, her eyes red but her posture stiff with pride. The room grew tense. The twins lowered their eyes, and Caleb clutched his drawing against his chest. Evelyn rose slowly, her heart thudding. I am not here to replace your mother, Evelyn said gently. I know you are afraid of that. You know nothing, Hannah snapped. You were not there when she died. You were not the one who saw the car, the glass, the blood. I was. I watched her slip away, and now you come here with your soft words, and everyone acts like it is fine to forget her. Her voice cracked, the fury slipping into grief. Evelyn stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. No one can forget her. Not your father, not your siblings, and certainly not you. But remembering her does not mean you cannot let light in again. Hannah's face trembled, torn between anger and exhaustion. If I smile again, if I laugh again, it feels like I am betraying her. Evelyn's voice broke, but she did not stop. When my husband sent me away and my parents sold me like an object, I thought I was nothing. I thought kindness had no place in my life anymore. But even then, deep inside, I longed for someone to see me. I think your mother would want the same for you, that even in pain, you are still allowed to live. The room was silent, but for Hannah's quiet sobs. She lowered herself onto the couch, covering her face. Evelyn knelt beside her but did not touch her until Hannah leaned in, trembling. Then Evelyn wrapped her arms around her, holding her as the dam of grief broke. I miss her every day, Hannah whispered. Every single day. I know, Evelyn murmured, and she knows you love her. That love does not vanish with time. For a long while, they stayed like that, wrapped in quiet comfort. The younger children watched, their eyes wide, as if they were seeing a miracle. When Daniel returned later that night, he stopped at the kitchen doorway and froze. He saw all 5 children gathered around Evelyn, their laughter echoing as they prepared a simple fruit salad together. Hannah, for the first time in years, was smiling. Real, unguarded, unforced. Linda appeared at his side. They have not laughed like this since your wife passed, she whispered. Daniel's eyes softened. Maybe I thought I brought Evelyn here to be helped, but perhaps she was meant to be the one helping us. That night, Evelyn stood on the balcony outside her room, the stars bright above her. She breathed deeply, the cool air filling her lungs. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a place, however fragile. She was not their mother. She was not their servant. She was simply Evelyn. And maybe that was enough. Daniel joined her quietly, holding 2 mugs of tea. I hope you still like ginger, he said. She smiled faintly. I never said I did not. They stood side by side, sipping in silence. After a while, Daniel said, You have changed this house. You brought laughter back to these halls. I did not do it alone, she replied softly. You gave them time and love, he said. You gave me hope again. Evelyn looked at him, her heart pounding. She wanted to ask why he had truly brought her here, but fear kept her silent. Instead, she turned her eyes back to the stars. Daniel's voice broke the silence. When I saw you in that square, it was not the first time. I had passed through your street weeks earlier. I saw you carrying groceries for an old man. Your kindness stayed with me. That is why, when I saw your parents trying to sell you, I could not walk away. Her breath caught. She stared at him, stunned. "You remembered me?" "Yes," he said quietly. "Because you reminded me of something I had almost forgotten. What peace feels like." Evelyn blinked rapidly, her eyes filling with tears. She turned back to the stars, letting their quiet brilliance steady her. For the first time, the mansion did not feel like a stranger's house. It felt like the beginning of something she did not yet have words for. The Reeves mansion began to breathe again. Where silence once pressed heavy against its walls, laughter began to seep through like sunlight after a long storm. Caleb ran down the hallways with drawings in hand. The twins filled the kitchen with chatter about dolls and games, and Noah occasionally sought Evelyn out for help with his schoolwork. Even Hannah, though still guarded, had softened in her tone, speaking fewer sharp words and spending more time at the table instead of behind a closed door. For Evelyn, these small shifts felt like miracles. Each morning she woke with a strange blend of fear and gratitude, uncertain whether the fragile trust would last, but eager to build on it nonetheless. She found herself humming while watering the flowers in the garden, a habit she had not carried since girlhood. One afternoon, as she was tending to the roses, Noah appeared at the edge of the path. He hesitated before stepping closer, holding a math workbook against his chest. "Auntie Eve," he said softly, "can you help me?" The title startled her, though she did not correct him. "Of course," she said warmly. They sat together on a bench beneath the shade of a tall oak. Noah leaned close as she explained fractions with patient care. He listened intently, his brow furrowed, and for a moment Evelyn felt the quiet joy of being needed. When he finally solved the problem correctly, his face lit with pride. "You are better at this than Dad," Noah confessed. Evelyn smiled. "I think he carries a different kind of wisdom, but I am glad I can help you." He hesitated, then whispered, "Sometimes I wish you had been here sooner." The words caught her off guard. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I am here now. That is what matters." Later that evening, Daniel returned home earlier than usual. His tie hung loose around his neck, and his shoulders carried the weariness of long hours. He found Evelyn in the dining room arranging plates for dinner. "You do not have to set the table," he said, watching her carefully. "I want to," she replied. "It helps me feel steady." He gave a small nod, but his eyes lingered on her longer than before. "You are steadying more than yourself. You are steadying this house." Evelyn felt her cheeks warm under his gaze. She lowered her eyes, unsure how to respond. That night, as the children finished their meal, Caleb leaned forward suddenly. "Can she stay forever, Dad?" The room went still. Hannah's fork clattered against her plate, and Evelyn froze. Daniel looked at Caleb gently. "That is not a decision for tonight." "But I want her to," Caleb insisted. "She makes the house feel alive." The twins nodded in agreement. Noah remained quiet but looked at Evelyn with unspoken trust. Hannah, however, crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. Evelyn forced herself to smile, though inside her chest ached with fear. Belonging, she reminded herself, was not a gift given in one night. It had to be built day by day. The following afternoon, Evelyn sat on the back porch sewing a loose button on one of Noah's shirts when Hannah appeared. The girl stood stiff, her arms folded, but her eyes were softer than before. "I saw what you did with Noah yesterday," Hannah said. Evelyn looked up cautiously. "I only helped with his homework." Hannah's jaw tightened. "Mom used to help him too. She always said he was smarter than he believed. When I saw you sitting there with him, it felt like her all over again, and that scared me." Evelyn put down the needle and thread. "I do not want to take her place, Hannah. I want to honor her by caring in the ways I know how." The girl's eyes glistened, though she turned her face away.
I do not know how to stop being angry.
You do not have to stop all at once, Evelyn replied gently. Healing is not a straight road. Some days will hurt more than others. But if you let people walk beside you, the weight will not crush you. Hannah was silent for a long time before muttering, You talk to me like I am not a kid. That is because you are more than a kid, Evelyn said softly. You are carrying wounds most adults could not bear. That makes you stronger than you know. For the first time, Hannah's lips curled into the smallest of smiles. Maybe. She turned quickly and walked away, but Evelyn knew something had shifted again. That evening, the family gathered in the living room. Daniel had brought home a stack of board games from the store, hoping to spark more shared moments. Caleb clapped with excitement, the twins squealed, and even Hannah sat down reluctantly. Evelyn hesitated at first, but Daniel gestured toward an empty seat beside him. Stay, he said simply. The game began awkwardly, with rules debated and pieces scattered, but soon laughter filled the room. Evelyn found herself laughing too, a sound she had not heard from her own mouth in years. When Hannah accidentally knocked over half the board, the twins burst into giggles, and even she laughed. Daniel leaned back, watching them with a look Evelyn could not quite name. When their eyes met, his expression softened. She quickly looked away, afraid of what her own face might reveal. As the night wound down, Evelyn stepped onto the porch for fresh air. The stars shimmered above, and the cool breeze brushed against her skin. She thought of the laughter that had filled the room, of Hannah's hesitant smile, of Caleb's innocent question at dinner. For the first time since she had arrived, the mansion no longer felt like a place she was passing through. It felt like a place she might one day belong. Her thoughts were interrupted by footsteps. Daniel joined her, his hands tucked into his pockets. For a while they stood in silence, watching the stars. You brought something back into this house, he said finally. Something I thought we had lost. Evelyn turned to him. You gave me a chance when no one else would. That is all I am trying to repay. You do not owe me anything, he said firmly. I did not bring you here out of pity. I brought you here because I saw someone who refused to let pain turn her bitter. That kind of strength is rare. Her chest tightened at his words. She looked down, her hands clasped together. I am not as strong as you think. Maybe not, he said softly. But strength is not the absence of weakness. It is the choice to keep standing anyway. They stood in silence again, the stars bright above them. Evelyn felt the weight of the past loosening, replaced by something fragile but real. For the first time, she allowed herself to wonder what tomorrow might bring if she stayed. Morning broke with the sound of footsteps racing down the hallway. Evelyn opened her door to find Caleb sprinting past with the twins chasing close behind. Their laughter echoed through the house like bells, bright and full of life. She leaned against the doorway, smiling despite herself. It had been weeks since she had heard such joy echo off these walls, and though her heart still carried caution, she allowed herself to breathe it in. Later that morning, Linda appeared at Evelyn's door holding a plain brown envelope. Her expression was unreadable as she handed it over. This came for you, she said. Evelyn frowned. She rarely received letters, and the sight of her name scrawled across the paper filled her with unease. She thanked Linda, closed the door, and sat on the bed. The envelope felt heavier than it should. Her hands trembled as she tore it open. The letter inside was written in her father's handwriting. Evelyn, we are sorry for what happened. We made mistakes. We would like to see you. She stopped reading. The words blurred through her tears. Sorry. The same parents who had sold her in the town square now asked to see her as if they were long-lost friends. She let the paper fall onto the bed and pressed her palms against her eyes. A knock at the door pulled her back. It was Linda again. She had not left.
Do you want me to take it away?
She asked softly. Evelyn shook her head.
No. I need to face it.
Linda hesitated.
They said they are coming here. Today.
The words struck like lightning.
Here?
Evelyn whispered.
Yes,
Linda confirmed.
It seems they were never really asking.
2 hours later, Evelyn stood at the top of the staircase as the front gate opened. The security guard escorted in two familiar figures. Her father, Henry, wore a worn jacket, his shoulders squared as if dignity could be stitched into cloth. Her mother, Ruth, walked beside him with a scarf tied tightly around her head, her eyes darting nervously around the grand entryway. Beside Evelyn, Hannah leaned against the banister, arms crossed.
Are those your parents?
She asked quietly.
Yes,
Evelyn whispered, her chest tightening.
Do you want me to call Dad?
Evelyn nodded, and Hannah hurried toward Daniel's study. Evelyn then began her slow descent down the stairs. Her mother's eyes lit up when she saw her. Evelyn?
My daughter,
she said, reaching out as if the past could be erased with a gesture. Evelyn stopped several steps away.
Why are you here?
Her father cleared his throat. Is that how you greet your parents?
You stopped being my parents the day you exchanged me for cash in front of the whole town,
Evelyn said steadily. Her mother lifted her hands defensively.
We were under pressure. Your father lost his job. We had no food. Earl Peterson promised us help.
You did not ask me, Evelyn said sharply. You did not care how I felt. You just handed me over. Before they could answer, Daniel entered the room. His presence was calm but commanding, and both Henry and Ruth shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. Good afternoon, he said evenly. Henry forced a smile.
Ah, sir, the great man himself. May God bless you. We came to see our daughter. We have missed her.
Daniel's eyes did not waver.
You missed the daughter you called cursed? The one you dragged into the open like she was nothing? I was there. I watched you trade her like livestock. And now you stand here smiling.
Henry's false smile faltered. Things are different now.
No, Daniel said firmly. The only thing different is that she found a place where she is treated as human.
Evelyn placed a hand on Daniel's arm.
Please, she said quietly. Let me speak to them alone.
He studied her for a moment, then nodded.
We will be in the garden, he said, guiding the children away.
The mansion grew silent again, leaving Evelyn standing before the two people who had broken her more deeply than anyone else.
You have 2 minutes, she said coldly. Say what you came to say.
Ruth began to cry.
Evelyn, we did not know what we were doing. We thought Earl would care for you. We thought you would be safe.
You thought wrong, Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. Henry sighed heavily. We were ashamed. You spent years in Travis's house with no child. Do you know what people said about us? We carried that shame every day.
So you sold me to wash it away,
Evelyn said bitterly. Ruth glanced around the grand foyer, her eyes tracing the paintings, the polished floor, the chandelier overhead.
This house is beautiful, she said softly. God has blessed you. We are proud.
Evelyn's stomach turned. At last, she understood. This was not regret. This was greed. They had seen where she landed and came to collect.
You want money,
she said flatly. Her father did not deny it. We are still struggling.
You will get nothing from me,
Evelyn said, her voice shaking only slightly.
I forgave you the day Daniel brought me here, but forgiveness does not come with benefits. You left me when I was empty. Do not come now that I am full." Her mother sobbed. "We are your parents." "You were my parents," Evelyn said coldly. "Now you are just people I used to know." She turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing," she said, her voice firm. "I went to the doctor last week for a checkup. They ran tests. I am perfectly healthy. I can carry children. The problem was never me. The years I spent drowning in shame, you made me believe I was cursed. But it was my ex-husband all along. You used my pain to cover your failures. The truth is out now." Henry stepped back as if struck. Ruth covered her mouth, trembling. Evelyn did not wait for their reply. She walked away, tears streaming down her face, not of sadness, but of release. In the garden, Daniel and the children turned as she stepped outside. Her face was strong, though her eyes were wet. "They are leaving," she said simply. Daniel nodded. He did not ask questions. He did not need to. Hannah stepped closer, her voice quiet. "Are you okay?" Evelyn nodded. "I am now." Hannah reached out and took her hand, her grip firm and sure. "Then we are too," she said. That night, the dinner table glowed with warmth. The children spoke freely, laughter weaving through their stories. Daniel's eyes softened as he watched them, then shifted toward Evelyn. For the first time, she did not look away. She smiled, not with fear, but with a quiet strength that came from finally knowing who she was. She was not barren. She was not discarded. She was whole, and she was home. The days after Evelyn's parents left were marked by an unusual peace. The air in the Reeves household felt lighter, as if some invisible storm cloud had finally drifted away. For Evelyn, it was the first time in years that she woke without the weight of shame pressing on her chest. She walked through the hallways, no longer like a guest afraid to intrude, but like someone who belonged, even if the belonging was still fragile. One morning, while she was folding laundry in the sunroom, Caleb burst in holding another drawing. His smile stretched ear to ear. "Look, Auntie Eve," he exclaimed, handing her the paper. She unfolded it carefully. This time the drawing showed a family sitting around a large table. Daniel sat at the head, the children around him, and Evelyn at the other end. Everyone's faces were smiling. Her throat tightened as she traced the crayon lines. "It is beautiful," she said softly. Caleb hugged her waist, then dashed away toward the backyard. The twins followed close behind, giggling as they carried dolls in their arms. Evelyn watched them go, her eyes shimmering. Later that afternoon, Noah entered the kitchen with a stack of books under his arm. "Can you help me with my math again?" he asked shyly. Evelyn nodded. "Of course." They sat at the dining table, and as she explained fractions, Noah studied her with a seriousness far beyond his years. Finally, he set his pencil down. "Auntie Eve, when I grow up, I want to marry someone like you." Evelyn laughed softly, touched by his innocent sincerity. "You are far too young for such promises," she said, touching his shoulder. "But I hope one day you find someone who makes your heart feel calm." That evening, Evelyn prepared dinner with Linda. The twins helped by peeling potatoes, while Caleb arranged silverware on the table. Hannah stood in the doorway, watching quietly. After a moment, she walked forward. "Pass me the onions," she said. Evelyn blinked in surprise but handed them over. Hannah began chopping with careful precision, her jaw set. The twins gasped as if witnessing a miracle. Evelyn smiled gently. "Thank you, Hannah." Hannah did not respond, but her presence at the counter spoke louder than words. When Daniel returned from work, he paused at the door to the dining room. The children were laughing, Evelyn was serving plates, and Hannah, though silent, was seated at the table. He stepped inside slowly, his eyes sweeping the scene as if afraid it would vanish if he moved too quickly. "You all seem happy tonight," he said. "We made dinner," Caleb announced proudly. Daniel smiled, his gaze lingering on Evelyn. "I noticed." The meal was filled with conversation, small jokes, and laughter. For once, Evelyn did not sit stiffly at the edge. She joined in, her voice blending with theirs, her smile genuine. She caught Daniel watching her more than once, but instead of looking away, she held his gaze. Something unspoken passed between them, fragile yet powerful. After dinner, Evelyn stepped onto the balcony to breathe in the cool night air. The stars glittered above, and the laughter from the dining room still echoed in her heart. She felt Daniel join her but did not turn right away. "You have changed this house," he said after a long silence. She kept her eyes on the stars. "I only did what felt natural." "You brought them back to life," he said firmly. "And you brought me back too." Evelyn turned to him slowly. His face was calm, but his eyes carried a vulnerability she had not seen before. "Why are you saying this now?" she asked quietly. "Because I do not want you to feel like you are here out of obligation or pity," Daniel said. "I want you to feel chosen." Her breath caught. "But why me?" "Because when pain tried to crush you, you did not let it make you bitter," he answered. "You turned it into kindness, and because you remind me what peace feels like." Her eyes filled with tears. She looked away quickly, overwhelmed. For so long she had believed she was nothing but a burden, someone discarded and unwanted. To hear these words was to feel sunlight breaking through years of darkness. The next morning, Evelyn awoke to the sound of laughter and running feet in the hallway. She opened her door to see the twins chasing Caleb, while Noah tried to play referee with a whistle he had found. Hannah trailed behind, rolling her eyes but smiling faintly. The house was alive, and Evelyn felt alive with it. Later that day, Daniel asked her to walk with him in the garden. They strolled between the roses, the morning air cool and fragrant. He spoke about his wife, Emily, for the first time in detail. "She died 3 years ago," he said softly. "A drunk driver ran a red light. Hannah was in the car. She survived, but she saw everything." Evelyn listened quietly, her heart heavy. "I am so sorry." "I did not know how to tell the children," Daniel admitted. "So I buried myself in work. I thought if I provided enough, it would be enough. But it was not. They needed more than a roof. They needed someone present. You reminded me of that." Evelyn looked at him with new understanding. He was not a flawless rescuer, not a man without wounds. He was someone scarred, like her, trying to build again from pieces. That realization softened something deep within her. That evening, as the family gathered again, Evelyn noticed Linda humming while she worked in the kitchen. Even the guards at the gate greeted her with smiles when she passed. The entire house, it seemed, was lighter now, and she knew it was not her alone. It was all of them choosing, little by little, to open their hearts again. After the children had gone to bed, Evelyn returned to the balcony. Daniel joined her, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "I hope you still like ginger," he said, handing her one. She smiled softly. "I never said I did not." They stood together in silence, sipping tea, the night calm around them. At last, Daniel set his mug down and turned to her. "When I first brought you here, I thought I was helping someone in need. But it turns out I was the one who needed help." Evelyn's chest tightened. "I am not perfect," she whispered. "Good," he said with a faint smile. "Neither am I." Their eyes locked, and for a moment the world felt still. No past, no pain, only the fragile hope of something new. Evelyn turned her gaze back to the stars, her heart full. She was no longer a woman discarded. She was someone seen, someone chosen, someone alive. The Reeves household had transformed in ways Evelyn never imagined possible. where grief had once ruled, laughter now reigned. The children filled each room with energy, even Hannah, whose icy demeanor had thawed enough to let genuine smiles slip through. Evelyn moved through the house not as a visitor, but as part of its daily rhythm. She cooked, helped with schoolwork, watered flowers in the garden, and listened when small voices whispered secrets they could not share with anyone else. It had been 3 weeks since Evelyn first stepped into the mansion with fear in her chest. Now she woke with something she had not felt in years: purpose. She knew that healing was not a straight line, but each day held new proof that broken things could be mended. One Saturday morning, Evelyn was in the garden with a watering can, speaking softly to the roses. She had begun to treat them as companions, greeting them as she tended their petals. She was leaning down to clip a dead bloom when Caleb's small feet pattered across the grass. He held a folded paper behind his back, his face glowing with pride. "Auntie Eve," he said breathlessly, "I made something for you." She knelt down, smiling. "What is it?" He brought the paper forward and unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing of the mansion with flowers blooming out front. Beside the fountain stood a tall man, 5 children, and a woman in a yellow dress. Evelyn gasped softly. "You drew all of us?" Caleb nodded eagerly. "Yes. And that is you. I know you like yellow because you smiled the last time you wore it." Her heart melted. She hugged him tightly, whispering, "You are very smart." He whispered back, "Can I call you Auntie Emma now? It is shorter." She laughed through tears. "Of course." Later that afternoon, Noah brought his math books into the kitchen while she chopped vegetables for dinner. "Auntie Emma," he said shyly, "can you help me again?" She wiped her hands and sat with him at the table. They worked quietly until he dropped his pencil and looked at her seriously. "When I grow up, I want to marry someone like you." Evelyn blinked in surprise, then smiled warmly. "You will one day, and she will be lucky." Noah grinned and bent back over his book, content. By evening, the twins had joined her in the kitchen, demanding to help fry plantains. They argued over who would flip the slices first. "Me first," shouted Claire. "No, I was here first," Emma retorted. Evelyn laughed. "You will take turns, but be careful. The oil is hot." They obeyed, giggling as they worked. The smell of sweet plantains filled the air, wrapping the kitchen in warmth. Hannah appeared at the doorway. The twins fell quiet instantly, but Evelyn kept smiling. "Would you like to help?" Hannah hesitated, then walked over. "Pass me a knife. I will slice the onions." The twins gasped, but Evelyn handed her the knife. "Yes, Chef Hannah." For the first time, Hannah smiled back. That night, the dinner table was alive with stories and laughter. The children passed plates politely, argued playfully over extra servings, and shared memories of school. Daniel stepped into the room still in his work clothes and stopped in his tracks. He watched his children, their faces bright and unburdened, and then his gaze shifted to Evelyn. She was not at the head of the table, nor the center of attention, but everything in the room seemed to revolve around her presence. "You all seem happy," he said softly. "We made dinner," Hannah replied, her voice steady. Daniel smiled and took his seat. The children chorused about how Evelyn had helped, each adding their own praise. He looked at her and gave a small, grateful nod. Evelyn's chest swelled, her heart blooming with quiet joy. Later, when the children had gone to bed, Evelyn stepped onto the balcony with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The night sky stretched wide, stars scattered like diamonds across velvet. She leaned on the railing, breathing in the cool air. The sound of laughter from earlier still echoed in her memory. Daniel joined her, holding 2 mugs of tea. "Ginger," he said simply, handing one to her. She smiled faintly. "You keep remembering." I would rather forget everything else than forget that, he said. They stood in silence, sipping tea. Finally, Daniel set his mug down and faced her. When I brought you here, I thought I was saving someone in need, but the truth is, you saved me. You saved this house. Evelyn turned toward him, her eyes shining. I am not perfect, she whispered. Neither am I, he said softly. But together, we might find something whole. Her breath caught. She searched his face, unsure whether to trust the fragile hope rising inside her. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw no pity, no judgment, only sincerity. The next morning, Evelyn woke to the sound of running feet again. Caleb darted past her door, shouting, "Catch him!" while the twins gave chase. Hannah followed, laughing freely. Noah stood at the corner, blowing the whistle he had adopted as his referee badge. The mansion was alive with joy. Evelyn stepped into the hallway, her smile spreading naturally. A knock came at her door later that day. It was Linda, holding a tray with freshly baked bread. You should know, she said, her tone softer than Evelyn had ever heard. This house is different because of you. Evelyn blinked, touched. Thank you. Linda nodded once, then walked away. It was not a grand speech, but it was more than Evelyn ever expected from the stoic woman. That evening, the family gathered for dinner once more. The table glowed with warmth, laughter spilling into every corner. Daniel raised his glass of water. To new beginnings, he said simply. The children echoed him, glasses clinking together. Evelyn lifted hers, her hand steady. As she looked around at the faces, Caleb's wide smile, the twins' playful glances, Noah's quiet pride, Hannah's softened expression, and Daniel's steady gaze, she felt something she had not allowed herself to believe in for years. She was not cursed. She was not barren in body or spirit. She was full of love, full of life, full of purpose. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to believe that this was not an accident, not a fragile dream destined to fade. This was a beginning, a real beginning. The mansion no longer felt like a shelter for broken people. It felt like home.